So I want to thank everyone first for being here. My topic, as Anna mentioned, was about the impact of contextual intelligence and the impact it has in our lives. But before I get started, I want to talk a little bit more about why this topic is intriguing and why it became important to me over time. So throughout the course of the last 30 years, I have been exposed to a variety of different cultures through the places I've lived and through the different career paths I've taken. I'm Indian by ethnicity, born and raised in British colonized Hong Kong, and after university lived in Beijing, in Belgium, and spent some years there, and now I'm in beautiful Switzerland. So that left me wondering, actually, throughout the experiences and exposure that I had, actually, I found myself asking over time, with what do I identify myself? I'm not completely part of my home culture, which is the one that my parents were born in. They're born in India. I'm not also part of my first host culture, which is Hong Kong, Cantonese, Chinese now. And with other host cultures that came into play, that kind of left me somewhere in the middle as a third culture kid. So I asked myself, maybe some of you in this room are also third culture kids. With an additional level of cultures thrown into the mix, the one thing that was very consistent to me throughout time was that I was exposed to a variety of constantly changing cultures and contexts. This is where I really started to realize that this kind of practical intelligence started to become important and helped me a lot as I started to navigate more cultural nuances, different connections, and forge more authentic relationships with people around me. So that's actually what brought me to talk about that today. So all this brought me to this fascination around this topic, and throughout this presentation, I want to encourage everybody a little bit to reflect on your own perspective, so you can consider a variety of different possibilities, both during and after the presentation, and eventually, so you can think a little bit different. Okay, so without further ado, let's kick it off. I'm going to start by zooming in. You see a picture of a woman over here, and I'm going to ask the audience, can you tell me a little bit about this woman's story? Anyone? What's her role? Maybe what does she do? What's some context about her?
Into music?
You can speak for the audience, actually. Any ideas?
She likes podcasts, maybe.
Okay. Anything else?
Outgoing personality.
She's not poor. Okay. All right. Anybody else?
Even though she has no camera on her phone.
Yeah. This is a very unique thing that I didn't notice about the picture. Maybe she flipped the phone upside down. You never know. Anyways, thank you for sharing. We'll come back to this later. So I'm going to start with a theory that was proposed by Robert Sternberg, who's an American psychologist and currently a professor at Cornell University. He talks about this triangular theory of intelligence that defines how people interact with the world around them. So he says most people interact with the world with a combination of these three types. The first is analytical intelligence. So it's a little bit more about the systems and the models and the functions that you use to solve problems. The second one is more creative intelligence, so it's a bit more about how do you use your past experience to solve issues and bring insight to the table. And the third is, of course, contextual intelligence. So it's also known a little bit more like practical or street smarts. And this is a bit more about how can you apply what you know to the situation in the moment, in the context. So for all intents and purposes, as you all know, I'm going to focus on contextual intelligence today. So if you guys need a little bit more of a scientific explanation to a theory, which is already scientific, it's one proposed by Tarun Khanna, who is a professor at Harvard. He talks about contextual intelligence being the ability for people to understand the limits of what they know and apply it in a context that is, or in an environment that is different to where they learned it. So if you learn something in environment A, it's the ability to rapidly apply that to B, C, D, E. All right, so I want to talk about contextual intelligence a bit more in practice. So I'm going to start off with your perception, which is what you see represented by this icon over here. Context is very often what drives people's perception. And that perception is very eventually a driver of people's decisions that they make in the moment. And those decisions very often drive our actions. Now, when people are focusing on individual problem solving and decision making, it's very crucial to actually zoom in to understand people's perspectives and how they have been shaped by the variety of contexts that they've been exposed to in the past. But now let's think a little bit more. What happens when you zoom out a little bit? How does that look? So if you think about you in a team, you start to realize you're not alone anymore with your perspectives and your decisions and your actions. And now you're amongst the perspectives of multiple other people around you. And this is where the pace of change starts to come about. You start to realize that individual contexts start to get minimized in a team setting, and decisions and actions contribute to a more rapidly changing context. If you zoom out a little bit more, you can only imagine within an organizational level, when you truly zoom out from teams, that actually you have a rapidly changing context created because your own perspective starts to become less and less significant as it merges with people around you. But the truth is, this is still very relevant, and this is something we're often faced with at a team level, at a department level, at an organizational level. So how do you really stay in control? Well, the reality is, all you can actually control is you. And why is that important, actually, at the end of the day? Well, the truth is, contextually intelligent people are also known to have 3 great skills. One is, of course, greater empathy. The second is enhanced creativity. And the third is stronger inclusivity. And why is that third point important and extremely relevant today? Because data shows us also that inclusive teams make decisions better a whopping 87% of the time. So the question now beckons, how can you actually foster this within you? And I'm going to show a little bit of an approach of how you can start outside in. So the first thing that is strongly recommended, of course, is to embrace complexity. So force yourself a little bit to get out of your comfort zone and be surrounded by people of diverse cultures and contexts that you don't know. The second is, of course, to expand your knowledge, learn a little bit more about the world, industries, history, settings, companies as well. The third is the two of those combined will actually already enhance your cultural sensitivity. So this is extremely important to be a bit more mindful of the people you have around you, understand nuances and how they impact their own decision-making and behavior. The fourth one really starts to become a bit more personal, that self-awareness is crucial, that you should actually be willing to criticize and challenge your own opinions and realize that most people around you are often making decisions by their own perspectives and their past experience, and most of the time it's not personal. And the fourth one is, of course, mission awareness, which is having a little bit this inclination to propel yourself towards a goal. And realize that when you are in a setting which has multiple hierarchies, it's important to acknowledge people's roles and how they contribute to how things move forward. And the last two is be courageous. So don't be afraid to actually ask difficult questions, be in difficult situations, and handle those complexities with the people you have around you. And last but not least, in a world where you've got 1,000 different perspectives, opinions, decisions, and things all mixed together, realize that you should use your interpersonal skills and empathy in a better way to build consensus and not division. All right, I'd like to finish by bringing you back to the first image. Can somebody tell me a different story now about this woman? Anyone?
She has a son.
Great. Anyone else? What might she be doing? Where might she be going? Okay. She also doesn't have a camera on her phone.
She's talking to somebody and listen to something funny. It's just she's laughing.
Okay. Anything else?
She lives in a very multicultural country or environment.
I love how everybody has so much more to say. This is amazing. Anyone else at the back? Okay. Fair enough. So I think in summary, in most cases, when you zoom out actually from what you see, either there, or there, or there, and finally over here, the only thing that is constant is that there has been a change in just one thing. And that's the context that you see the person in. Thank you. That's it. If you also want to scan stuff, you can. All right.